Okay, guys, I completely missed you, but it was such a busy 2 weeks. So I really just needed to do some R&R. So I am back, and today I was going to look at one of the favorite things that us Larrys like to do is lyrical analysis. So when you listen to Harry Styles and Louis Tomlinson separately, it's easy to think their songs live in different universes. But then something happens. A phrase, a line, a chord progression that feels like an echo, a mirror, a quiet call and response across time. So I thought it'd be interesting to look closely at those echoes, the lyrical fingerprints that Harry and Louis have left across their solo work since One Direction. Now, this is not about proving or disproving Larry. It's about reading between the lines, about listening to what's felt, not just what's said. So, what are the secrets in Harry and Louis' lyrics? Have we missed anything? A Larry reading edition. So every story begins with a leaving. When One Direction went on a hiatus in 2016, fans expected solo music. What they didn't expect was how personal those albums would sound, like fragments of a private conversation accidentally released to the public. And I'm just going to focus on the published songs, not the unpublished songs from both of them, because the unpublished songs almost seem to say more, which makes me think, why were they unpublished? So in Harry's early solo lyrics, we hear distance. I'm still the same as I was. In Louis, we hear anchor. I'll keep holding on to you. One moves outward, one looks back. So a Larry reading of these moments isn't that they're confessions, but that they're complementary energies. It's the same polarity we saw on stage for years, one performing freedom, the other grounding it. Together, they created an emotional symmetry on stage. Alone, though, that symmetry still hums underneath their words. Now, both artists use water almost constantly, because the most recent Lemonade video, at the end, Louis jumps into a pool. And then there's that footage of the scenery of him kind of like immersing in the water that looks almost eerily similar to the same imagery capture in Harry's Falling video. So for Harry, water seems to be movement and baptism. I'm just getting older, drown me in your love. For Louis, it's memory. The tide will bring me back to you. Now, water as a metaphor, as a symbol, has been used in literature and even in clinical applications, at least in the Jungian sense, to represent emotion. So elements can have been used metaphorically, not just to discuss this arc, but many other arcs. So in symbolic language, water is the bridge between worlds, the unconscious, the emotional. So when both return to that element across albums, Larry readers hear something deeper. Two people using the same metaphor to process separation, a shared dreamscape. The fandom started charting lyrical parallels, waves, storms, ships, and shores, long before the artists admitted how autobiographical their songs were. Did they really admit it, or is it sort of some elements they admit, other elements they're kind of coy about, right? Maybe it's coincidence, or maybe, as Jung would say, the unconscious finds its own way to speak. All right. So now let's talk about masks. So Harry's lyrics often play with the idea of being seen and unseen. If I could fly, I'd be coming right back home to you. Later evolving into, I'm in my bed, you're not here. Louis writes about proof. I've been looking for something I can prove. They orbit the same emotional problem. What it costs to live honestly when everyone's watching. The Larry fandom has read this as the mirror of concealment, Harry processing visibility, Louis processing credibility, both using art to reconcile identity with exposure. When those motifs recur, like secret rooms, locked doors, and coded letters, and matching colors that are coded when they wear certain clothes, fans don't hear coincidence. They hear the sound of someone remembering a promise they once couldn't keep. So lyric is dialogue. The idea of a dialogue between their songs is not new. But when you line up release dates and lyrical motifs, the interplay becomes uncanny. And I don't think it's confirmation bias. Louis' walls, I built them so you couldn't break me, lands months before Harry's fine line, step into the light. One builds a wall, the other opens a door. Then Louis answers with faith in the future. These walls are only paper thin. Whether intentional or not, their catalogs trace an emotional progression, from repression to reclamation. Larry reading doesn't require belief in a secret romance. It only asks us to notice how two artists keep circulating the same emotional terrain, as if the story never finished. And maybe that's why the fandom persists. It feels like we're witnessing the same conversation, spoken in different languages of melody. All right, so the psychology of repetition. So there's something almost therapeutic about the way both men write about patterns. Harry, we never learn. We've been here before. Louis, same mistakes that I've always made. Those are kind of like the messaging arcs, right? So it's a psychological loop. Repetition is both comfort and curse. So to a psychoanalytic ear, repetition is memory seeking resolution. When the fandom reads Larry, it's not just romance they're decoding, it's unresolved attachment. Each album becomes another, kind of like another round of EMDR metaphorically, exposure to the same emotional image until the nervous system can finally relax. And that's why some fans describe the Larry journey as healing, because repetition, when brought to consciousness, becomes art instead of compulsion. So, the public versus the private truth. By now, both artists have crafted entire mythologies of privacy. Larry leans into ambiguity, never confirming, never denying. Louis confronts it, expressing irritation, exhaustion, but also sometimes resignation. From a literary perspective, this duality is brilliant. One writes from the shadows, the other from the spotlight. And in that friction, the fandom finds its heartbeat. So the Larry reading isn't about invasion, it's about interpretation. Fans use their lyrics the way analysts may use dreams, not to accuse, but to understand what emotional truth might live beneath the performance. And that's why the narrative keeps evolving even when the men themselves stay silent. All right. So maybe the greatest secret in Harry and Louis' lyrics is that none of this was ever hidden or was hidden in plain sight. Every love story leaves an afterimage, a trace burned into language, gesture, and sound. Whether or not Larry was ever real in the way fandom imagines, it's undeniably real in the collective psyche, an archetype of longing and restraint, courage and concealment. What we missed perhaps wasn't the clues, it was the empathy beneath them. The willingness of two artists to translate silence into song, and of a fandom willing to listen beyond the obvious. So maybe the secret was never theirs alone. Maybe it was ours, a shared collective. The audience kept hearing connection, even when the world told us not to. And it makes me wonder if, and I believe Larry is real, is if it's a choice and they want to just be discreet, that's okay. But I've wondered for a while, is part of this because at such a young age, the storyline or the fear when their careers were just launching, that if it ever came out that it could ruin them or that they could be fined or they could be in breach of contract, all the things that has been hypothesized. Do you think that even though it's been 15, 16 years, that the embers of that, shall we say, threat still burn bright in their minds and their subconscious, and they're almost psychically tethered to this fear of coming out, even though the fandom would totally support them, they wouldn't lose sales. So, what do you guys think? Because I have long wondered, and I count myself in the um, section of the fandom that really thinks that there was a lot of fear that happened, and that after the Cake Gate incident of the Louis being flown to Los Angeles after the party, that both him and Simon have confirmed happened, that that was the first break in a fear that was instilled. And of course, Harry and Louis being so close, they started acting differently on stage. And then there's footage that have surfaced over the years where they're being separated. They can't sit near each other. Harry looks like he's asking for permission to hug Louis on stage, and like, no, you can only shake his hand. Like, there was like a buildup. There was like accumulation of all this kind of like not confirmed, but almost like plausible evidence, right? And it's like after a while, there is no coincidence. I really think that it's quite possible at a young age, if you are scared into being told that the dire consequences would be so detrimental to your life if you ever were to be your true self, that into your 30s and 40s even, you can be literally in the closet, no matter what kind of legal changes protect you, because there are more rights compared to the 1950s. But it's been talked about how the level of closeting, especially in the music industry, is pervasive and rampant. So if they haven't come out, I'm of the opinion that that is a relic of the kind of the fear that was instilled, which to me, given how young they were when it would have happened, Louis was the only one that was 18. Everyone else was still a minor. It is shocking and it's appalling that would have been done. So I think that's also why many Larrys really are hoping, not for their own self-satisfaction, but really for them, that because we believe that Larry Stylinson is true, and if there's been suppression, that we would be so happy for them to come out, because it takes a lot more of a cognitive and psychic load in your mind to suppress who you are. It's like method acting by force almost. And we want them to be free, because there's all those old interviews where they talk about freedom. I think that's probably why the Larrys are so passionate. They want them to be free and free to love as a human right.